I was very nervous. I'd never been to a gynecologist before, and so I was already anxious. My blood pressure was high. They had to get multiple readings. I wanted to know why I wasn't having a period regularly, because I'd always had irregular ones, but this was very different than normal, and I was going through a lot more pain than normal. And so that was my main concern, was just talking with a health provider about that. So I would be debilitated. I couldn't move. I couldn't sleep. A lot of times I couldn't eat. It would just take me out for the whole day. I couldn't function. She just kind of blowed it off. She acted like it was something that happened to everybody and that this was nothing out of the ordinary. They did belittle me. I felt very ridiculed there for even going. They acted like I shouldn't be there. And when I asked questions about different types of birth control, they just completely dismissed it and said that I didn't need to be on it. When I brought up that I may have PCOS, they said, "You are thin and you don't look hairy." I was in a long sleeve shirt, pants, and a mask. They could not see any hair on my body, and they said I was too thin to have it and didn't test me. But then I felt like maybe she was right, maybe I was over exaggerating the pain. Maybe it was something that everybody went through and it wasn't a big deal. And so I left feeling very uncertain about what I had felt in the first place, and it invalidated the pain that I was feeling, because I thought, well, if everybody does this, then I need to stop whining about it and go into a hospital when apparently it isn't needed. I just think that doctors don't respect women a lot of times. Even female doctors, they can't empathize with patients. They don't understand what they're going through. Specifically young patients, they think that they haven't lived long enough to understand real pain or what women go through, when their pain is just as valid as anybody else's.
So my first big struggle with that was just feeling confident enough to go into the doctor and say, "Hey, I want this." Well, when I did, they didn't really ask me what type of birth. I didn't even, honestly, at that time, didn't know there were different types of birth control. Thought there was one birth control pill, they gave it to you, you took it, whatever. And of course, as time went on, I took the same birth control pill for years. And I went to many different healthcare providers, and as I got older and gained weight and just time happened, started having blood pressure issues, and they kept upping my blood pressure medicine. And we attributed it to stress, we attributed it to age, to weight gain, to not exercising, lots and lots of different things that could have all been it. And finally, one day, I was talking to not my gynecologist, but to my regular healthcare provider, and she was like, "Hey, something's up." And we start looking, and we found out that the birth control I'd been taking for years and the blood pressure medicine I took interacted with each other. And it didn't affect the birth control, but it was pretty much not even allowing the blood pressure medicine to react. So when I do go into my gynecologist then and say, "Hey, we found this and we need to change it," it was, "Well, why don't you change your blood pressure medicine?" So they hadn't caught it, and the pharmacy hadn't caught it, and my OBGYN hadn't caught it. So it took years before that happened. And I was with them on it. It was like, "Oh, it's because you've gained weight, you're getting older, you're just not in the shape you used to be in." And there were so many times that I just blamed it on that. And after we fixed the problem, it's like, "Oh wait, I do have some energy. I do feel like doing this." And so I was angry and sad. I don't know, just lots of emotions there. There were lots of emotions.
I had to make a visit with a gynecologist when I was only in 5th grade to see about an issue that would require cosmetic surgery in regards to my body. And she was very dismissive, not very supportive, did not listen to my own opinion. She sort of forced her own opinion in regards to my body, which made me feel very unsafe and uncomfortable in her work environment, and I did not appreciate that. I definitely had some fears. I had never gone to a gynecologist, and this was something very personal to me because it was in regards to my chest, because something was very abnormal and I was already very insecure about it, and I did not feel comfortable about someone else seeing it. So it was very hard to overcome that fear, and the moment I stepped in there, something just felt very off. I kind of regretted going. It made me regret even going in the first place, because I felt like if she feels this way, then what if other gynecologists and doctors feel this way about my condition? What if what she suggested in place of augmentation is the only way I can go, and if I do go with it, I might be more unhappy with my body then than I am now, and I felt it definitely left a very negative opinion for me. In my own opinion, society sort of pushes for girls to be perfect and to have perfect bodies, and it's like, you should get implants because it's like visual of a perfect woman or a perfect girl. That just seems so off to me. It's something to so normalize that women should have larger breasts, so you should get implants instead of getting augmentation, making it smaller and fixing the issue that you've had, or I had in this case. And it grossed me out. It disgusted me. Like, her casualness about the idea of just get some implants was just left a very bad taste in my mouth. She kept pushing and pushing that idea on 12-year-old me, who's just very confused, and I didn't know what to think of it. I just did not know what to think of it.
There was a point in time when I was going to UK for school, and I had gotten out of a relationship, and I had a couple different new sexual partners, and I just wanted to go to student health to get an STI STD test for free, because they do them at UK, and I was like, you know what, that's something everyone should do, so I'm gonna normalize it. I'm gonna go do it. It's the responsible thing to do. And so I went to student health, and you have to fill out this questionnaire when you go for a gynecology appointment. It asks you about sexual health questions and how many sexual partners have you had, what kind of sex have you been having. So I answered it honestly, and I get into the room, and they knew what I was there for. And so I was already undressed from the waist down, on the table in stirrups, whatever, for the exam. And the doctor came in, and he was just re-asking me some of those same survey questions. And then he started the pelvic exam, and he was like, well, why did you feel the need to come, get this done today, the exam and STI testing and stuff? And I was like, well, I've had such and such many partners in the past however long, and it's been a while since I've gotten a test, so I'm coming to get a test just so I can be responsible and do the right thing and make sure I'm not passing things to people. And he looked at me dead in the eyes, and he said, well, considering just how many partners you've had in the few months, I really definitely think that this was something that you should be doing. And I snapped my legs shut, and I said, get out of the room. And he was like, I'm just saying that you're doing the right thing. And I said, no, you made a judgment of my sexual habits. I need you to leave the room. And I was sat up, complete, I covered myself up, crossed my legs. I was like, I need you to leave. And then the nurse that was in there as the third party person or whatever was she was telling me to calm down and trying to push me to lay back down on the table. And I said, no, get your hands off of me and get him out of the room. I'm filing a complaint against him as soon as I leave this room. And obviously nothing happened. He still works there. He's right there on the website.
I had a very peculiar experience with an ovarian cyst about almost a year ago now. So I was visiting a friend in Lexington, and I remember my stomach was killing me. I just had so much pain, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out why. And she was a nurse, and after a few days she was like, you really need to go see a doctor, because at this time all I could eat was spinach. I couldn't eat food. I couldn't, you know, I was just like, nothing about my body was normal at this point. But to me, it felt like, oh, this is just another episode of like, something's going on, it'll pass. Because that's the way I'd treated it before. I ended up going to an walk-in clinic in Lexington. And I remember, you know, saying my concerns, like, my stomach's hurting, I don't really know what to do. I don't know what's going on. So they were like, okay, well, we'll like do an x-ray and see if there's something going on. They did an x-ray, and I remember I was walking out of the clinic and I got a phone call, and they said, you need to go to the ER immediately. You have a huge mass in your stomach. And I was immediately shaken. So eventually they start having to run a bunch of tests, CT scans, ultrasounds, blood tests. And I'm just sitting in the ER in so much pain at this point. So I eventually learn that I have an ovarian cyst on my left ovary, which they assume I had had for 8 to 10 years. It had been growing. I had to have surgery to get it removed in that weekend. It was around 12 pounds. That was inside my body, and I had no idea. And not to get into too much detail, too much graphic detail, but the reason I had been experiencing so much pain in that week was because it had started turning in my body and was pushing all my organs up, which is an experience I hope never happens to anyone else. So I had it removed, and after that, I'm like, this is linked to so many other health issues that I've had. I used to experience just painful migraines, like I remember going to neuro doctors, they could not pinpoint what was wrong. I was on seizure medication for these, like that's how bad it was. And they're like, yeah, that's probably has something to do with the blood flow of the ovarian cyst. Just, you know, having that in you for so many years, having that cyst in me for so many years, and then it getting removed, it was like, I can't describe it other than liberating, because I have answers now. I know why I was in so much pain constantly. I know why I never felt like I was having a normal human experience. And it's incredible to me that somehow it lasted so long. And I'd brought up these concerns with doctors before, and they examined me and they're like, nothing's wrong with you. How does that happen? How do we let that happen? And how often is this happening to other people?
I don't think they really take the time to get to know their patients. And I feel like as a whole, as a lot in the medical profession, and I know that it's hard to do that because a lot of doctors are overwhelmed and they're overbooked, and there's lots of things that attribute to that. But I think especially as they get into their professions farther, and maybe they become jaded, because I know that can happen in any profession. That happens in my profession. But I think they kind of get jaded, or they get settled even. It's just like, oh, that's probably what this is. And they don't necessarily take a lot of time to talk to you about what your concerns are. And I think as a young woman going into a gynecologist, again, especially if you're a woman going in to see a male gynecologist, you're probably not at ease and you're just ready to get out of there. And whatever he tells you, you're like, okay, thanks. And you leave. And I think they are kind of that same way. It's like, oh, she's good, she don't want anything. And they just kind of let you go. When you go to a specialist and you have a health concern that's scary, and you walk in and they don't even take the time to ask you, well, what's your family history? What's this, what's that? They just look at you and say, oh, well, your results were okay. They don't even talk to you, or they use terms that you don't understand. It's just sad to think that people leave doctors' offices and have no idea what's going on with their own body.
They expect you to woman up and just kind of deal through the pain. It is something that every woman has to go through, but you don't need to be in constant pain. I don't think it's right to just dismiss that.